You're listening to the Beyond Sundays podcast, where we tell stories of God's faithfulness, because the God who did still does. We kicked off season 3 last week talking about the importance of community. So if you missed that episode, definitely go back and take a listen. But this whole month, as we gear up for our annual spiritual growth campaign, we really are focusing on some of the basics of what we believe here at Beltway Park that's essential for the life of every believer. So this week, we're talking about serving the local church. So join us today as Patrick and Elisa Burke share their story of saying yes to where they felt the Lord calling them to serve. Y'all, this is such a neat story of how God can lead you to do one thing that in turn just blesses you abundantly. So join us as the Burkes share their journey of saying one yes that in turn led to so much more, like God answering prayers that they had been praying for a decade. Y'all, it's going to be awesome. So let's get to it. Well, hey, I'm so excited to be joined today by the Burkes. Hi, Patrick. Hi, Elise. How are you guys doing today?
Hi, doing awesome. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Doing good.
Awesome. Well, I am thrilled to dive into this conversation today because y'all's story is so chock full of God's faithfulness, and I can't wait for y'all to unpack that. But before we do, why don't y'all share a little bit about you?
Okay, she's pointing at me, so I guess I'll go ahead and go. So I'm currently active duty military. We're here on our second assignment to Dias. We've been in Abilene a little over 11 years total between those two assignments now. We are have been married for 16 years next week. We've got 3 boys. One's going into 7th, one's going into 5th, and one's going into 2nd grade. So we've got 2 that are still in Beltway Kids and one that's in Beltway Students now. And we are active on the serve team in Beltway Kids.
Awesome.
Yeah, that sounds like us.
And also, Elise, you were in the military too at one point, right?
I was. I got out before we had our first son, and then I've been stay-at-home mom for a while, and now I get to be a student just like my boys.
Awesome. Well, we're about to dive into all of that. I'm so thrilled. I wanted to have you guys come up here today to have a conversation because y'all's story is, we're talking about serving because of how valuable and important it is. You know, we learn about it in the Word of God, like the Word talks to us and shows us what it means and how important it is to serve one another, to love one another, to spur one another on to love and good deeds. But there are so many principles on the side of serving that I've been at least contemplating is one of which is that it's so much better to give than to receive. And I know that that's something that y'all have personally, like you can testify to God's goodness and faithfulness and the blessings because you've followed in obedience in the place of serving. So I'm going to stop talking now, and I would love for y'all to share your story with us today.
All right. I'm going to just go ahead and start, and Elise will jump in and backfill. I promise we won't talk over each other. But so like I said, we're on our second time here in Abilene. Our first trip here started in 2009. It probably took a couple years for us to really decide to go to a church here. Both were Christians when we got married in 2007, had gone to church growing up, and it was just kind of a matter of stepping out of comfort and finding a place to start going to church. So Beltway was one where a lot of people I worked with went to church, and so we kind of dabbled in it. You know, once a month we go to church and catch it online or listen to it after the fact for a while until probably like 4 or 5 years into being here, we decided that it was really time to make a decision and get going to church. And so we started coming regularly to church, realized that, like I said, it's a big church, and the best way to break that down is to get involved in a small group. So we found a group of folks at a small group that we met at the gym, actually, and started going to small group with them. And really started kind of planting roots here, thinking, you know, the Air Force always says you're going to move like every 3 or 4 years, and now it's been like 5 or 6, so we're probably never going to move. And so we said, yeah, let's go ahead and plant roots. Like Abilene's where we're staying. So we planted roots. We got really started to get deeper and deeper, and the Air Force caught on to that. And then I all of a sudden had orders to go to Del Rio to instruct down in Del Rio. So we found ourselves uprooted and moved kind of suddenly and find ourselves in a new place in Del Rio. And one of the things that we learned, at least initially before we really got into serving, was just the importance of finding a church family to be a part of. And so we said that we wanted to make sure we didn't delay years and years like we did our time here. We wanted to find a church. And even with that, it took probably months to find a place that we wanted to call home in Del Rio. And we did, and we found a good church down there and just, again, kind of just started going. And eventually that led to serving.
Yeah, it was one of those, we planted our feet there and said, okay, this is where we feel called. And there were a handful of places that, people in our squadron went, but we didn't feel like that was the place we were supposed to be going where everybody already went. And so when we found this church, we attended for a while, and it was just, okay, let's get the feel of this place. And then he started drumming for the worship team, and I started to sing on the worship team because I realized I couldn't have anything to say if I wasn't willing to put in the effort. And so it was one of those stepping out and going, this makes me super uncomfortable, but I know that this is what the Lord is asking me to do in this season. So we go from starting on the worship team to realizing there are probably 20 people here who regularly serve, and we see them serving in multiple capacities.
And that's tiring.
Yes. And that was a lot of it. We're going, okay, it's the same people doing all the things. Where else can we help? Because doing this one thing really only took 2 days a week. And we had extra time, and we enjoyed the boys being there. So it was one of those, hey, what do we have to bring to the table? We have our time, we have our treasure, and we have our talent. So right now we're bringing our treasure, and we're bringing some of our time and a little bit of our talent. So where else can we pour those out? We talked to the staff there, and they let us know what they needed from us, and it was really the welcome team. So we spent some time working on the welcome team and just trying to see, was there anything that could look different?
Yeah.
Was there anything we could do better? And that led to us being asked to help reorganize some things. We were both in the well, he's active duty and I was in the military. So we just kind of have those mindsets of, well, how can we make this more efficient?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we started working with them to come up with some structure. And along the way, it was tough. There were old ways that they were set in, and they worked for them, sort of. And so bringing the new ideas to the table, we were pushing against some old things. And the way we talked about it was, and not in a negative way at all, but was plowing, because it was hard work. It was trying to, take some of these set in ways and say, hey, could you think about this differently? Is there a way that you could change the way you've done it, even though it works, and see if this way works better? And it was time, and we both got tired after a while, and we would ask the Lord, are we released from this yet? And he said no, and it was, okay, we are learning how to be obedient to what the Lord has called us to. And that was that season there was really diving down and learning obedience.
And it was frustrating. It was so frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we would... there'd be nights where we'd sit at the dinner table after we put the kids to bed, and we would just kind of stare at each other and just wonder, why are we here? What are we doing? What difference are we making? I'm beating my head against a wall. We have this simple idea, and it's just met with no's, and we're not going to do that because we haven't done it that way before. And we'd have other friends. There was another couple that started working on the serve team with us. They were like 6 months behind us on timeline. So they got to Del Rio 6 months after us and started going to the church, and we'd have them over and we'd talk and try and share the vision of what the lead pastor had asked of us and what we had structured, and he'd blessed off us doing, and trying to figure out how do we get everybody under the lead pastor to see that vision too and move forward, and what small changes can we make. And I'd probably asked on like a weekly, if not bi-weekly, and like that's twice a week, not every other week. Are we done? Can we leave? Can we find another church? Can we just stop?
Asking the Lord this. Yeah.
Asking the Lord and asking her, asking Elise, because she's wise counsel for me, and seeing if we had confirmation. And, I would just be feeling that. I wouldn't hear the Lord tell me that I'm released, but she was clearly getting you're not released yet. Mm-hmm. And so trusting her and having that be, okay, I'm not confirmed to release. I may not be hearing that from the Lord that I'm released, but she is clearly hearing that you are not. Mm-hmm. So trusting her and staying as a team and saying, okay, then we're still all in on this, even though my forehead's really sore from hitting the wall. And honestly, that was one of those times where, it's more blessed to give than receive. And I really felt like I wasn't reaping any blessing at all out of that whole time. And we got orders to come back to Abilene kind of rushed. I was given orders to leave in 6 weeks to come back up here, which is not usually typical. And so I moved up here ahead of them because they were the boys were finishing school. So I brought our camper up here and lived out of that for a couple of months while they were finishing up. And And during that time, she was still going to church down there a bit, but we're also splitting weekends back and forth and going to church back up here a couple of times during that. And we met up with that couple that was 6 months behind us in Del Rio and started talking to them. And they said that when they really dove in to take the role that we had left as we were leaving the church, things started to move and things started to change because people saw the not necessarily the work ethic that we put in, but the heart and the reason why we had worked the way we did and why we served the way we did. And they saw that same heart in this other couple, and they realized that it wasn't just this transient, ooh, let's just come in here and shake things up, but it was no, this is the vision, and they're listening and they're hearing from the Lord what we need to have done. And they'd referenced, like Elisa had said, plowing. And that's what they said to us. This young couple said, you guys plowed, and you plowed the field. So when we came in after you with the seeds, it was planted in soil that was ready to grow the crops. And we never got to see those crops, but they did. And other people down in Del Rio are still seeing the results of those things.
And there's something to be said there, right there. It's a principle. Like, we sow, there's a reap, there's a harvest, but we don't always get to be a part of it, right? But y'all were faithful in that place, and what you invested in, other believers are reaping to this day. Other families are reaping what you guys invested in. And that's not going to return void or empty for you guys. How that's all going to shake out, I have no idea, but the Lord handles it. What I want to move into now, though, is that season when you guys moved back, when you were both back up here in Abilene. What happened next?
Okay, so once school finished up, they moved back up here. We got our house, which you look over the back fence and there's Beltway.
Y'all are close.
Yeah, we are close. Like, I mean, if I had a better arm, I could throw a baseball over here, but I'm old and it probably would break, so I'm not going to try that. But we talked about what church are we going to go to. And we had learned, if anything in Del Rio, the Lord asks you to move outside of comfort. And Beltway was like a big security blanket. We knew it before. It's right there. We've got to try different churches first just to see if the Lord's calling us somewhere else. And so we kind of had mapped out, all right, here are like the 4 or 5 different churches we're going to check out on different weeks. We're going to talk to people at work, see where they go. We had this grand plan, and Sunday morning rolls around, and the boys will not get out of bed. Everything is just taken forever. We can't get out the door. And
every parent said amen.
Yeah, exactly.
It
right?
was real.
And so, like, I don't know how it's set up, but like every church in Abilene starts like right around 9 o'clock. And so here we are, 10 minutes till, and the only church we're going to make it to is
in your backyard,
right around the corner in the backyard. And so we haul over to Beltway. We walk in, and it was just this feeling of not a security blanket, but like when you walk back home after being gone on vacation for a long time. And there were some faces that we did recognize. We didn't really know them that well because we hadn't, like I said, our first time, we hadn't really dived really deeply in, but we recognized some faces, but just the heart of the church to welcome folks in and just make you feel like you're at home. And the message and the worship and everything was just, it was clear that we needed to be here. So Elise looked at me after service and said, all right, we need to go on the growth track. Like, we're going to go through this. We're going to be members. We're not going to just kind of put our toes in. We're going to dive all the way in.
That's good.
Yes, there was no hesitation there. It was, okay, if the Lord showed us how to be obedient in one place, we're going to go ahead and continue that here. And so it was, all right, let's do this. We went through the growth track, we went through the essentials, and we got to the membership class, and it had all of the boxes. Where would you like to serve? And so we just kind of asked the Lord, really, where are you asking us? And then we also, in our comfort, checked the areas that we wanted to serve. And we went and had our interview with Randy Turner. And in that, it was, hey, here are the areas we've marked down. Anywhere really but kids would be great. But honestly, whoever calls us first, whoever needs us most, that's where we're going to say yes to, because we've learned the power of saying yes to where we're called. And it was Michael who called us first, and it was, hey, I know you said not your favorite idea to work with kids, but I just need you on the welcome team. And so you'll mostly be with parents, and you're just checking kids in, really low threat. And we decided, yeah, right? We decided we could do that. We could work with the parents and then say hey to the kids.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, it was, hey, now could you do the worship team for Patrick, because he really loves to drum. He's been drumming since you were 11. and drummed on his old team at his old church when he was a kid. And it was just these little gradual steps of him diming me out to be on the worship team too. But honestly, like, I love it and I wouldn't be anywhere else. But it was just little steps. For a while, we taught upstairs because that was just the need at the time. And then we started to serve on Wednesday nights. We did re-engage just because that was what we felt the Lord was asking us to do for our marriage, to communicate and just to learn some new tools. And so Wednesday nights now we serve upstairs, taking care of the kids while the adults are downstairs. And it was this process of just saying the next yes and the next yes. And then also saying plenty of no's. There were times where we felt like we didn't have the capacity to add one more thing. And if we did add that one more thing, we were really going to be taking away from something that we were doing and doing well. So I think that was that next season of we've said yes for a long time. Now it's time to say no, and learning where was our yes and where was our no, to let our yes be yes and our no to be no, and to not feel shamed or guilt in that, which every leader that we said no to was so honoring of our no. And they say, we bless you in that season, what you need.
Well, because I know part of your story, we have to dive into the part of the blessing, right? Because there have been blessings that y'all out of your own mouths have been able to testify to of like God's goodness in this place of serving. Because you've been serving for how many years now here at Beltway around this time?
4 years.
4 years being back from Del Rio. And in those 4 years, you've seen God meet needs and show you paths and things that you had like above and beyond all you could ask, think, dream, or imagine, but honestly were your heart's desires, and some maybe you didn't even know. Could y'all dive into what you've received out of that place of giving as the Lord has led?
Absolutely. So like Elise said, Michael, when he called up with his low threat job of just greeting people, it seems like it's really low threat, but I'm trying to say this the right way. I don't like meeting new people.
Okay.
I don't like putting a smile on and shaking lots of hands.
Yeah.
It's not my jam. I'm a horrendous introvert, and you could just stuff me in a room by myself and that'd be great. When I went through survival school, like the solitary confinement was like the best part. So here I am on welcome team. I'm like, okay, that's an easy assignment. And Philippians 4:13 is true. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And it may be silly that it's just put on a smile and greet people, but I've met so many really awesome folks because I put on a smile. In the days I didn't want to, I put a smile on, and I can hold that smile because there was something else there that's given me the strength to do it. And it's such a small thing, but he's faithful in the small things. And because we said yes there, we got to join on the team with another couple, Jennifer and Jeremiah Young, and got to foster a friendship with them. And Jeremiah and I became really, really close friends. And it was just it never would have happened had we not said yes there. And so through that, we got to meet Josh Hardwick and get to know him a little bit better. Sorry,
You're okay.
Got to meet Josh Hardwick, and he got to know us a little bit better. And so as we go through Reengage, we still haven't found a life group that we want to be a part of. And so we went to Josh and said, hey, do you know of any life group that would work for us? Again, horrendous introvert, hate just throwing a smile on. I'm not going to go to the big life group fair and find a life group. That's not going to work for me. I'm just going to like sit in the parking lot and stare at things and not interact with people.
That's too much.
That's a lot. Yeah, I'm going to be just overwhelmed with anxiety. I don't know. Maybe not the right word. I wouldn't want to get out there and interact. And so he said he would do some looking around. And that night he went to his life group, which happened to have Jennifer and Jeremiah Young in it, and said, hey, I have this couple that I'm thinking about inviting to our life group. I'd like to talk to everybody about it first. And Jeremiah had said, hey, I've also got a couple I want to bring up after this. And all it turned out they're both talking about us. And so all of a sudden we're now in this life group. And this life group has been exactly what you read about a life group being. We do life together. We fill each other. We fill our cups when we're in a group together. When somebody's in trouble, the rest of us are there. When we're having a good time, everybody's there to celebrate. It is life with this group of friends. And that small yes to welcome team led to this piece, which was the answering of 10 years. 10 years of prayer, specifically from Elise. We had prayed for godly friends, but she had been praying for a group of godly women to be around her.
Yeah, we had prayed for good, godly friends. I had prayed specifically for good, godly women because that was something I had struggled with for a long time, to be able to feel like I could be myself, to be open about the wants of my life, the needs of my life, and to not feel like somebody's going to talk behind my back or somebody's going to share my secrets with anybody else. And then we had really prayed for people who parented the way that we parent, who would help us along in any of the things that we're not sure about, because we love wise counsel. You know, we don't want to make all of the decisions on our own because we have just all of these wonderful resources around us. And so to get parenting and friendship and just 10 years of prayer to finally see that come to full fruition was this life group. And almost our entire life group serves in Beltway Kids. And so it was really sweet to see how something we didn't think we were called to, we really were, and developed this passion for an area that I had said no to. And I joke, I say, don't tell the Lord what you won't do. He'll show you what you will do. But it's been so sweet because he's unearthed this joy that has come out of serving with people who have the same joy. And it didn't always start that way for them either. It's been these steps of obedience that have come to fulfill joy and peace and increase patience. So between our life group and just getting to do what we enjoy doing, I enjoy singing, he enjoys playing. And so this worship piece has also really bubbled to the surface of we're finding so much joy in that, and not from stepping on the platform, but of getting to watch these kids worship. I leave one in ear out every week because listening to their worship, it is so pure and it is so full of just joy. Like you can hear them smile and it's so sweet. There have been times where I've been up there and I've had to stop singing because I'm going to cry, because listening to them is better than anything that's coming out of my mouth. And it has just been amazing. It's been overflow. So obedience came joy, and from that there's been overflow, and we've been able to share, and we've been able to just experience what his perfect peace looks like, because it's been community and it's been friendship and it's been these passions that he's bringing out in both of us. So we didn't think we wanted to start with kids, but really he's taught us this is what I made you for. And Patrick is an amazing teacher, and so he does that at work, and then getting to see him do that with the kids, it is my great joy to watch him flourish and to watch him step into these things that the Lord already had inside of him, but he's, gearing it towards a different avenue that we never even thought of. And it's been so cool to watch him work through just our yes.
I know there's two stories right here that I want y'all to enter. One is about your young man that attached to your hip that you told me about earlier, and the other is the passion the Lord drew out of you. So Elisa, why don't we start with you? Share with our audience what bubbled out of the surface from you just continuing to say yes and following his leading, because this is cool.
So I knew when we came back here, I have some loss in my family. I knew that wasn't going to come back void. I knew there was a reason for it. And so when I came here, I actually sat down with Adina Brown, who does the grief ministry. And I said, this is my story. I don't know what you can do with it, but I feel like I'm supposed to help. And so I started on Monday nights helping with Side by Side, and really felt like this group thing was cool, but I'm really supposed to do one-on-one interactions with people. There's more that I need to be doing. And from that, and then linking up with Wednesday nights, working with the kids and a handful of members in our group foster, and just getting to do life with these foster kids while getting to do these grief classes, I really was like, oh, these kids, these are the ones who need my attention. And it was so cool to be able to see the reason I was being called to the areas that I was calling, and knowing that I was supposed to go get a degree in counseling, which I'm in the process of getting my master's degree in counseling, and knowing that my heart in that was to counsel foster children. And it was probably a few weeks after that epiphany that the 2030 vision came out.
I mean, that's just too cool. The
was
timing
just-
on that is just too cool.
Patrick looked at me and he was like, well, Okay.
It's so cool because God won't always show you his end goal or the
full plan.
Yeah, the full plan or the destination of your race. Because what I found is over time, if he shows you where he needs you to be, you'll go, okay, cool, God, I got this.
Sure.
And you'll try and take the map and the compass and go your own way, but you miss all of the teaching that he has on his detoured paths around that way. But he'll give you those little signs of, hey, this is the next step. This is the next thing. Kind of Priscilla Shire had said it on one of her sermons. It's like a GPS. It doesn't tell you all the directions up front because you're going to get lost. It'll tell you when you make that next turn. And so until it tells you to make a turn, you just continue on. That was where God was with Elise, because she had started her degree already with a focus on it being for grief. And then it kind of transitioned, well, maybe kids, maybe foster kids. I think we're going to do foster kids. And then Pastor David got up there and talked about the 2030 vision and how there's going to be so much more for foster care and that counselors are needed. And yeah, I looked at her and I was like,
the ministry center. I mean, all the things.
And all of these things. And that was God having planted in her heart these little things that started to light on fire. Mm-hmm. And then that confirmation and that one little piece in the map that goes, yes, you're on the right path. This is what I need from you.
Yep.
Yeah, there's no doubt for me that this is the path I'm supposed to be on. And it's really fun. I go through and I write papers for school, and I can go back and look at my old papers and see how I was shifting through them. The initial ones focused mostly on grief and how that was a necessary field. And then it would focus more on adolescence. And then it was just the kids. And every time I write a paper, that's just where my heart focuses. And I can say, this is why this is the area that I need to go. There's no doubt in my mind that, okay, my brain works in a way that understands this is what that kid needs. And I enjoy it on Wednesday nights now. We're around the kids who are there for re-engage evenings, and walking into a room and being able to see the kid that needs my attention for the evening. And sometimes it's all of them. Sometimes they all just need some loving. And then it's this idea that one just needs a conversation tonight. And they have something that somebody needs to hear, and to be that someone it can be a story, or it can be, I had a hard day at home today and I didn't feel safe to talk to anybody. To be that safe place for them has been so sweet. And it confirms for me that I'm going on the path that the Lord has asked me to, because it keeps bubbling to the surface.
Yeah, and the Lord, from a previous conversation that we've had, the Lord kind of highlighted to you like almost vision for even the Wednesday nights, like in your purpose in helping them with some tools, some practical tools of teaching the children now versus them needing the tools and to be taught later. Could you share that just real briefly?
Yeah, it was we went through the leadership classes for re-engage and thought that we were going to go be re-engaged leaders, and just saw on Wednesday nights how few parents there were up there, and realized we were in a gap where we needed to take a break between Thanksgiving and Christmas. We didn't want to start a group and then have to take 8 or so weeks off because of holidays and the new year. But we saw that there was still a need upstairs. So we asked, hey, can we step in on Wednesday nights? And as we were balancing, do we go back and lead or do we stay here? It was a realization that those parents Wednesday night are getting tools for their marriage, and those are going to benefit them a ton. But those kids who are here on Wednesday night, they're getting ministered to as well. And if we can teach them tools as kids, we may never see them in re-engage later because they're not striving, they're not struggling to communicate with each other. If we can give them these communication tools, if we can just give them ways to work through whatever it is they're working through on Wednesday nights, who knows what that's going to do for them as adults.
That's good.
Now, just really quick, hopefully we can still see them in re-engage later on, because re-engage is not just for broken and struggling marriages, but also for good ones too. So
yes,
they can come to enhance their marriage, but not have to repair a marriage.
Yeah,
that's good.
Just want to give that shout out because I don't want Pastor Mike to be mad.
True story. It is for all.
It's for all.
It
yeah.
is.
Well, I know you have a story too, Patrick, and it comes from that place of getting to use your gifts and a passion that you love, which is to drum, but also learning about worship in that same place.
Absolutely.
And then dealing with something that, what did you say earlier about difficult children?
There's no difficult child. There's just a child going through a difficult circumstance.
You had one of those.
Yes.
So would you tell those two stories?
Absolutely. So like you'd said, I love drumming. I've been doing it since I was 11 years old, and math is hard, but that's almost 3 decades now of drumming, kind of off and on as I started off in the Air Force and going through pilot training and everything, but always tried to unpack my drum set wherever I could, and finally got to play again in Del Rio. And I'd played in worship bands from 7th grade all the way through 12th grade, and took that break and got to do it again in Del Rio and realized how much I'd missed it and how much I enjoyed it. And for me, that was where I could find a place of worship. Elisa's got her voice and it's phenomenal, and we'd be in the main sanctuary and she could worship and throw her hands up and just get into it. And I was just kind of like, I felt like Will Smith and Hitch, like I was just staying in my zone and I didn't really know how to dance otherwise, because singing is just not my thing. And I felt that I'm not going to be able to really worship unless I can drum. And while it kind of seemed a little selfish, and it was, God was able to use that. And over 2 years, maybe it's been 3 years that I've been, it's been 3 years now that I've been on the worship team drumming at Kids Park. And it's been in the last 6 to 8 months that I have actually really learned what worship means. And it's not been because I've been playing drums or being in the main sanctuary. It's because I've really taken that focus to watch the kids. Like Elise says, when she's up there singing, she always has an in-ear out and she can listen to the kids. And I can't really hear them because I'm behind a cage, but I can watch them. And I can see them with no shame. They don't feel embarrassed when they throw their hands up or when they're dancing and when they're worshiping in their own way and singing at the top of their lungs. Like, if they can do that, why can't I? And that was when the Lord was like, hey, you can. You just actually have to. And so it was at camp, at Camp Bonita with all the kids. And I was there as one of the leaders for the 4th grade boys. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. We had done a conference at Passion City in Atlanta. I've got a friend who used to be on their praise team there, and he invited us out to this conference called the Lift Conference, where they have creatives and worship leaders and everybody go out there. And this is when we were transitioning from Del Rio to here. And we went there, and it's a sanctuary with 2,000 worship leaders. We're all singing a passion song that had just come out at the time called Follow You Anywhere. And it was moving. It was, you could feel, like tangibly feel the Spirit of the Lord in that place. And it was amazing. And so we had pushed for a long time to actually have that song as part of our Kids Park playlist. And we got it added just before camp. And so it played, the team was up there and did a phenomenal job playing it at Camp Bonita. And I felt that same presence with all of these kids sold out in worship. Hands were out. I mean, kids are on their knees in tears. I'm kind of in tears thinking about it right now. And I just realized it doesn't have to be worship leaders. It doesn't have to be people with educated voices who've gone to all these degrees to learn how to sing. It just has to be somebody willing to do it and give the praise to the Lord. And I can go down in main sanctuary now, and I can make joyful noises to the Lord. I won't say that I'm singing well, but I can do it, and I can feel His presence, and I can feel the worship, because Leif had said it. We're not singing these songs and playing this music for us. We're doing it for Him. And so the kids taught me that. 100%. It was watching these kids on Sunday mornings that showed me that.
Man, it's amazing what kids can unlock in us as adults.
Oh,
Yes.
gosh,
I mean,
yeah.
Jesus, I'm in the Gospels right now, so just hearing Jesus say, let the little children come to me, and unless you inherit the kingdom like one of these, you won't understand it. You know, it's just that beautiful picture of just children are humble.
Yeah.
They're so humble, and they're so pure. And yeah, watching them is absolutely a game changer for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Now, you'd asked about this young man that I met on a Wednesday night. And it was probably my first or second week after we told Michael, hey, we want to take a break from Reengage, but we still feel the calling that we need to serve and we need to do something, and we see this need. So can we take our break from Reengage and work with you up here? He's like, yes, please. So that's where we joined up. And this young man, he was having a rough night, and he didn't want to listen to the adults, and he wanted to just cause a ruckus and be a distraction during Michael's service and his teaching. And he and I kind of had, we had to sit down and we had a chat, and it was kind of, what's the way to say it? It was a very sporting chat, because I was kind of running around, not necessarily yelling at him, but I'm kind of like chasing him, trying to get him to stop. That was mostly our discussion. And it followed the next week. And it followed like the third week. And I was exhausted after Wednesday. I felt like I'd run a marathon, and really it was like interval sprints, more or less, through all of it. And it kind of became one of these things where I think this young man realized that I wasn't going to quit, and I had made sure that I wasn't going to quit either. So I was in. He and I were going to make a connection, And I prayed a lot about it, and Elise and I prayed about it. And I was like, I don't know how I connect with this young man. Now I realized something that I had said at work when I was in Del Rio. I was teaching kids how to fly planes down there, and we'd call them struggle bus students, and you'd have ones that just the light bulb wouldn't go off, and I often would get paired with those students because somehow I could reach them and I could make that light bulb go off.
Because you're a teacher, which is what your wife said.
Yeah, as Elise said. And when some of the younger instructor pilots would come and ask me, how do you do that? Like, what are you doing? I said, well, I have to change the technique in which I teach to suit the student who needs the teaching. I can't be a one-size-fits-all. And I realized that with this kid, what does he need more than what do I have to give? And as Elise said, he's not a difficult kid. He was going through a difficult situation, and he needed somebody to be there to listen, somebody who needed him to feel valued. And so I looked at him one night and I said, hey, buddy, I can't have you running around. We're causing a distraction, and we're busy with, Pastor Michael's up there. He's teaching. There's a lot of kids that are listening and want to hear what he has to say. If you don't want to listen to him, that's okay, but I can't have you back here. But I can't sit with you all night long either, because there's only 4 adults tonight and there's like 1 million kids. So I got to kind of be out there.
Real.
Yeah, I got to be out there and helping them. So tell you what, how about you help me? And you can walk around with me and you can see if there's kids who may need a fidget toy. Or when we go over to the slides, I'll show you what slide I need you to click, and you can click those slides for me, and you can help me pick up some of the toys, and you can be my helper tonight. Will that work for you? And his eyes lit up like, yes, I needed purpose. Yes, absolutely. And he joined at my hip and was following me around that whole night. Well, next Wednesday comes around, and he comes up to me, what can I do to help you tonight?
Wow.
Can I be with you again tonight? I said, absolutely. And now it's turned into when he sees me, he runs up and he gives me a hug. He drew a picture for me one night, and he drew it during the week and came in Wednesday night so he could see me and give me this picture. And seeing that breakthrough that he had, but the breakthrough I had to realize that there aren't difficult kids. And the Lord's going to be faithful. And it may not be, the audible voice of the Lord going, Patrick, you need to treat him differently. But talking to wise counsel and somebody going, hey, why don't you just have him help you? Why don't you just try this? And being open to listen to that, being humble ourselves to realize I don't know all the things and I need to try to change my approach. And that, seeing those little glimmers of the Holy Spirit working in me and seeing him work in the kids is why you're not going to see us leave Wednesday nights. And we told that to Pastor Michael. So now it's on the podcast. So it's kind of written in stone. Wednesday nights is where you're going to find the Burke family up in kids ministry. Because awesome. I get to see that week in and week out with them. And I know Elise does too.
Yeah. Well, we know that everyone's story is unique and everyone's called to different things. So I don't want you out there thinking, well, that's great for them, but what does this mean for me? Like, well, how do I get involved? Where do I serve? How do I serve? What's the formula? There's not one. There's just not a formula. It's just about being obedient and listening to the Lord in this place. And so I want to ask the two of you, for someone who's thinking maybe they've never served and they're thinking about stepping outside that comfort zone, what encouragement would you give to them? But also in that place of, and maybe you could answer that, Elise, and then Patrick, maybe you could answer the question for someone who has led before and is burnt out, right? And is not serving right now because of that place. Maybe speak into that and offer some encouragement too. So Elise, why don't you go first?
I would say that if you're on the cusp, realize there is a place for you no matter what. Your talent, your time, all of that is needed. And it has a place. And the Lord, if you'll listen, will guide you to that. But even if you're just stepping out completely unsure and saying, I'll do anything, don't think that any of it is little. Because serving on the welcome team seemed little to us at first. And we were like, okay, we'll try this out. But wherever you decide to step in with your yes, it's not going to come back void. And it's not just for you. And it's not just for that one person that you interact with. I think my favorite thing is that first yes then starts a ripple. And so it's that one person that you touch who then impacts 3 people, who then impacts 5 people. So there is no such thing as a little impact when you start to serve. So one small yes to you can impact generations because you decided that you were going to step into what you were already called to, because the Lord has already put this inside of you. He's already given you gifts. He's already given you talents. And if you say yes, He's going to bring those to the surface. They're going to rise up and they're going to start to bubble over. And just that little yes, that little obedience is going to turn to joy, and it's going to impact so much more than you ever thought it could.
So, yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a place for anybody that even feels the small nudge to go and serve. Don't think that, oh, it's all taken care of. They've always got it under control. Beltway makes it happen. Oftentimes makes it happen with not enough people. That's kind of the nature of the beast sometimes. But more hands are always helpful because we're called to be the hands and feet, and service is part of what God put into us. So even if you've served before, and you overcommitted and you feel burned out, you feel strained, you feel like the only thing you've got the ability to do is just to get here on Sunday mornings. One, I just want to say thanks for still going and not just giving up and walking away from the church completely, because
Amen.
that can be something that seems like the easy thing to do. Is just, I'm burned out and I'm done. I need to just walk away. So thank you for still coming and still being a part of it. We'll still smile and welcome you and shake your hand. And it's more of a genuine smile for me now than just a fake one.
It's not the fake
So
one.
yeah, it's not the
the
fake.
real one.
It's not the fake one anymore. But if you are burned out or you feel like I just don't have the time, there are so many places to serve that doesn't take a lot of time. Just like a welcome team, it's like 20 minutes between service. So you finish, we go to first service, we finish first service, we put on our name tags, we check the check-in machines, and we work in between services. And we stay a little bit into the service to make sure that any straggling parents that are having those mornings like we did our first time back to Beltway and they're getting the kids in, that we're there for them. But if all you have is 15 minutes, we'll take 15 minutes of you being able to smile and greet and help parents get kids checked in. Or it doesn't even have to be kids ministry. If you're out there handing out the sermon notes for 10 minutes, that's 10 more minutes than we had without you. And that can just be, if you're burned out, the small way to just start that flame again a little bit. Or if you're scared about, I don't have a lot of time to be there all day Sunday and Wednesday night and, all through the month of June, it's okay. You can do 5 or 10 minutes here, and the Lord will take that 5 or 10 minutes and He's going to multiply it. Because when we tithe,
kingdom principle.
we tithe with 10% of our income, because God can do more with that 90% than I can do with 100%. If I tithe 6 minutes out of every hour, God's going to do a lot more with the 54 remaining minutes than I could have done with the full hour. So if I give 10 minutes, He's going to give me so much more on the back end of that.
Yeah, that's what I would call like a low energy but high impact serve role, right? It's low energy. It doesn't take a ton, but it's high impact. And you may not know the impact. You may not. And that's just the reality of when we serve and we choose to think about other people and to serve one another and love one another in the capacity that we can, or that we're trying to, right? Sometimes we are trying. But we may not always know the impact, but it doesn't mean that it gets returned void.
Absolutely.
Like there's so much that goes unseen. Just like when y'all shared your story about plowing the fields. I mean, y'all aren't there to reap them, but they are being reaped. And there's things that are coming up out of that ground that is because, in large part, of you plowing that way back in Del Rio.
Thanks for saying that.
Well, you guys, thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation. I'm so thankful for you sharing your story of just saying those tiny yeses that led to such abundance and God giving good gifts to both of you and your family. So thank you for your service. Thank you for the way you love people and the way you love Beltway Kids.
Thanks for having us. It's been a pleasure.
It's been great.
I love the Burkes. Aren't they just amazing? And their story is so incredibly cool. If you are already serving in the church, I just want to take a pause right here and just say thank you. It takes a lot of amazing people here at Beltway Park to do all that God has called us to do, not just on Sundays, but all throughout the week. So thank you for serving. But if you're on the fence about jumping in and serving along with us, I hope you are encouraged today to take that step if God is calling you. I don't know where He might be calling you to serve, but remember what's on the other side of obedience. It's blessing and joy and so much more. So if you want more information on getting plugged into Beltway Kids, Beltway Students Reengaged, Grief Ministry, becoming a greeter on Sundays, I could keep listing all the serve team opportunities, but we'd be here for quite a while. So instead, head on over to beltway.org/serve and jump in with us. Ask the Holy Spirit to highlight a ministry to get involved in or a serve team position, and then say yes. It's true we are a big church, and you might think we don't need any more help, but that's just not true. We are all called to be the hands and feet of Jesus, and there is a place for you to do so right here at Beltway Park. Thanks so much for listening to the Beyond Sundays podcast. We hope you'll have a wonderful day. And remember, God is always moving, and He's moving in your life too. Beyond Sundays.